Culture is an important aspect of any community. However, culture can easily be lost if not actively cherished and cared for. In Winnipeg, immigrants have created associations and organizations that celebrate cultural diversity, creating areas of unique cultural expression and feeling. Casa Dos Acores at the Azorean Cultural Centre is taking action to ensure younger generations are inspired to preserve the Portuguese language, culture, and history. Paulo Oliveira tells us more. Let's get into it.
Well, my name is Paulo Oliveira. I am the vice president, or newly vice president of Casa dos Acores. It's basically our association made up of the Portuguese community from the islands of the Azores, which make up the 9 islands of the Azores. So.
Very cool. Why did you want to take on the responsibility of being in charge of an organization like this, or at least the lieutenant of the organization?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I help out pretty much all three of the organizations on a voluntary when I can and whatnot. But when our new president, Joe Santos, came in, and he gave me a call and he said he was looking for a vice president and he thought that I would be, a good candidate to help him out. I felt very strongly on what his mission was, knowing that he has been the president before, many years ago, before he moved to Portugal. I felt very confident that I had a leader and somebody that can unite our community to a point where we can move forward. I was very excited about that, and it's important to get a good team in place. Every good team needs a good manager, and he's definitely going to be that for us, yeah. So it was easy to come on board.
And now is the time of rebuilding community. After COVID and everything kind of got disconnected. There was effects of this beforehand with just the death of community in general. We've seen it, people feeling a little more isolated, a little more separate. So now it's more important than ever to, have associations like this that are celebrating culture, which are celebrating diversity, and bringing people together. So just, what are the cliff notes? What is the organization?
Well, it's basically to continue on with our Azorean culture. Our roots are based, 90% of the people here have been here for 30 plus years, but we always hold back to the traditions of home. And, you said it all, our lives got dismantled and everybody got pushed to the side and it was all individual, right? Now people are starting to come out. People are starting to want to unify and get back into a feeling of belonging, into a feeling of community, right? And myself included, we were always trying to look at, where do we belong? Get to the point where you're going with people that share your vision, that share your culture. You feel a sense of belonging, and I think this is what we need, and a lot of people are looking for that.
It's that sense of unity, camaraderie, and I guess familial, if we can just put that in quotation marks. It's like with sports teams, right? When you're on the same sports team with someone, you just have this sense of yeah, these are our guys, we're celebrating them. And community and culture is like that. And of course, it's awesome to have people from the outside come celebrate community with you. But it's also cool to have that group where you can celebrate those similarities of this is something that we know about, this specific thing. For myself as a Mennonite, when talking with other people, when we're talking about Zurkamsborst or Schmonfot, which is just cream gravy that you put on your pierogies or potatoes or stuff, there's always something just fun oh yeah, the same thing. You're in the in group with me on this one.
It's that connect, right? You brought up food. Well, that's every culture. And you can ask anybody from any culture. They got the greatest food. They got the greatest culture. And, it's that pride, right? It's that sense of belonging. It's a sense of community. And again, like us, we're now at the point where I'm at the point where I want to pass that on to my kids, right? And have them know what the Azorean cultures, the Portuguese culture is, and that's that sense that you're saying. You walk into one of our association, let it be one of the three, and you know you belong, right? And that's important. That's very, especially from what we've just came out of. That sense of belonging, you can't say enough. You can't, and it's not lost on me that people are lonely, and for some, that was a good thing, but for others, they really, really...
Big difference between an introvert versus an extrovert.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And now I think even the youth, and I say youth, I'm not talking about younger than 20. When you're looking at what I consider youth, is people are at that phase of their life where, okay, you've done the partying, now you're starting to think more of a family type of mindset.
Yeah, kind of like that 20 to 30 range.
Exactly. So when you're looking...
people are really figuring out who they are.
Right. And at that time, what you took for granted in terms of culture, something as small as your food, right? You grew up on it and you take it for granted. But then when you haven't had it, and then you see it, it's like, oh yeah, my grandmother used to do it, or and it's like, okay, now you're connected, right? And I think that was one of the things that I really felt very strongly about community and about our community in general, is the pride.
If you don't have... Culture is intrinsic to the human experience, regardless of where you're from, what community, a culture builds around you. But sometimes... I'm talking about like Western culture here, like this idea of just like capitalism, consuming, that sort of thing. This idea of when you think of like, what does it mean to be Western sort of thing? There's a little bit of a hollowness to it at times, that you miss kind of the color, the richness, just the things that have kind of consumed. Like look at just McDonald's, for example, when it started. What's his name? Oh, no. The guy who played Batman. He was also in Birdman. Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton, the McDonald's movie he was in, where it started off as this like just family shop. And then it got popular, and it just completely changed, and it lost that sense of humanity.
It lost him when he realized that he could charge for the land instead of the actual food, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, anytime you start to add commercialization into it, and you start to get money into it, then you start to lose.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people... They're tired of that, right? It's like that Christmas, right?
You lose the authenticity.
You lose the meaning, right? You lose the meaning of what you're really seeking. It comes back to the roots. It comes back to what's more simple than just sitting down with your family over a nice plate of food. Ultimately,
singing
it doesn't
folk
matter.
tunes.
Oh yeah, getting the old cantina or the accordion out, or the guitar out and just humming and singing old songs. It's amazing.
It's soul food.
Exactly. And again, and I hate to harp on it, but it's a sense of belonging, right? It's a sense of making a connection with somebody, just that first string of the guitar, or, when you hit the ivory and it's just a boom, you know where you are, right?
For the Portuguese community, what is something that's cool and uniquely Portugal? When I was talking with the other Paulo before, he talked about he found a recipe book with over 365 different recipes for codfish, which blew my mind, because I know I maybe could think of 10 varieties before I ran out of ideas. And he was also mentioning the 7 skirts that they would wear when the fishermen went out to sea, just waiting for the sailors to come back home. What is something else that is just... when you think of it, you're like, that's Portugal?
We have our rooster, very famous, right? Yeah. So a lot of people don't know the story of the rooster, and there's many depending on what part of Portugal you're from. To me, the rooster is symbolic of just how we defended our country, right? Something as simple as a rooster, just warning the villagers that we're being invaded, right? So all of a sudden it's a war cry, here we go. So, and something as simple, and obviously you have decoration, it's decorated very differently depending what part of Portugal from. There's that, but it symbolic. It's just the dance is the fado. I think, the music, if you have an opportunity to hear to the fado, very soulful, blues, very painful, and then it gives you the expression of just utter pain that people felt and it's expressed in the guitars and expressed in the lyrics, and it's something that no matter where I am and I listen to it, it just soothes me. And it sounds, because if you hear it, it sounds painful.
Pain and sorrow is an experience that every human has.
Right. Yeah, and you connect to that, right? And no matter what part of Portugal you're from, you're connecting to it, right? And again, it's repeated throughout the world, throughout every culture, but it's the music, it's the food. You know, we all claim we have the best, right? But, you know, like complete villages come to a stop at harvest season, right? And they go from one farmland to another. Well, what's the common theme? Well, it's the food. It's helping your neighbor. It's the camaraderie. It's the community coming together. And and everywhere you go, every part of Portugal, you have your little quirks. You have your little traditions.
The things that's slightly different.
Slightly different. So, is there? Once you take a deep dive, and the sad thing about Portuguese culinary is that it's not that well known. So, when you start to take, you're looking. I mean, the island where my mom's from, Madeira Island, Madeira wine, I'm sure you've heard of Madeira wine, but we get that, but you also, fried bananas, right? And I can go into it, and again, we don't have time. On and on, yeah.
Building the Portuguese community in Winnipeg, and, you have the president here, and you believe in his mission. What are some of the steps to continue to grow the community and build that sense of unity?
It's imperative that we connect with the youth. Good thing about our youth is that our parents have done a good job in keeping our culture alive. And as they've grown older, they've been able to not accept it, not, get out and do what our parents are doing, but they've always believed in that. We see it when the national team plays. You're getting kids 7, 8, 9, 10 years old walking around and, being proud to be Portuguese with the flags and the shirts. Yeah. And they don't really grasp that sense of what they're really trying. It's that community. It's that pride in being Portuguese, right? And our goal is to bring the youth. And again, mid-20s and at the point where you're starting to build your own family, right? And then you want to know, okay, you know what? This is our community. And the other good thing is a lot of our parents took us back to Portugal, engulfed us in our traditions. So it was easy to do, right? So now our goal is to bring them on board, get more on the social media side of things where we can bring them up.
Kind of the new generation of celebrating culture.
Exactly, yeah.
You have to be active in preserving culture because it's all too easy to lose it within one generation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
My family, there wasn't too much enthusiasm about learning Low German. It's not something that was shunned or looked down upon, but it's something that my grandparents maybe didn't necessarily see as too integral. So they didn't get my mom to learn. And I mean, as a kid, unless you have an active hand leading you, you're not going to seek that out necessarily, right, by yourself.
Exactly.
And now I don't know a shred of Plotdicht at all, which is kind of sad because it's a sense of culture that is gone. And I'm slowly going through the process of learning about my roots and things, but you have to make sure it's instilled because it can just disappear like that.
And suddenly, when you get into the second and third generation, you start to see the movement away from the culture. And language is usually the first to go, right? Mm-hmm. So the first generation, first immigrant generation, your parents speak it, they don't speak English, so you're going to learn. Your kids, like with me, unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets in life is I didn't speak enough Portuguese to them. They can understand it and they can get by, but they're missing that fundamental, right, language where, hopefully they're starting as they get older, they're starting to speak it more, we're starting to take it more seriously. I know I'm in the minority because thankfully the majority have spoken Portuguese enough to their kids so they can continue on.
Yeah, they've maintained it.
Yeah, and they've maintained it. But again, it's very, very important that when we bring the youth into it, that they continue that on for the next generation, and that's our main goal.
Where can people go to find out more information about your organization?
Well, we're on Facebook, so they can go to Casa Dos Acores on Facebook. We're trying to set up other media pages right now, so slowly you'll be hearing from us.
Have any stories you'd like us to share, or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk. And have yourself a good one.